Thank you, Rafael. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And I have to say that this has been really empowering for me to attend to this conference. So thank you also for that. And animal rights was the reason why I came politically active. I was 9 years old when I saw in the evening news, I was watching the news with my family, and I saw a film footage from a Greenpeace clip where the Greenpeace inflatable went in between the whale hunter's harpoon and the whale. And I was 9 years old and I watched the clip and thought, wow, that is the most important thing one can do, and I want to do the same. I want to become a Greenpeace activist. And so I did. And now I'm here. So that was my background. And in this presentation, I will go through how the fundamental animal rights have been promoted in Finland, and especially how the issue has been dealt with in the Finnish Parliament. And first, a little bit about the context. So in other words, what do we want and why? And then what has happened on a parliamentary level in Finland so far. And after that, I will analyze how the proposal of fundamental animal rights has been received and what progress there has been. So, I want to start by highlighting that during my time in politics, we have managed to get several victories for animals, such as closing the last dolpharium in Finland, banning several harming practices done to animals, possibility for camera surveillance in slaughterhouses, compulsory identification of dogs and cats, and in a capital level in Helsinki, we have done the decision to halve the meat and dairy consumption in all of our schools and kindergartens and hospitals and so on. And we also, this spring, I made an initiative that we should actually do also a city-level animal welfare program, and that was also passed. So now, at least in Finland, it's the first of a kind, and I think at least in Europe, first on a capital level, but so on. So I wanted to highlight that progress has been done, because the actual topic is a little bit different. Little bit difficult. But first, so why do we need the constitutional rights if we get progress done without those? Firstly, I see that the current legislation aimed at protecting animals is insufficient to safeguard their rights and welfare. And secondly, there is a clear need to draw the attention on how poorly animals are protected under the existing legal framework. And thirdly, we have effectively normalized the mass destruction of animals as a byproduct of our industrial activity, while at the same time the political valuation of animals remains marginal. And lastly, we are facing a situation where decades of widespread disregard of animal rights permitted by our current laws has led to this extensive violence and has also contributed massively to the global ecological crisis. This is indeed an existential issue. Preserving a diverse and healthy environment and living conditions on Earth for us and for other species. So all this together means that the current situation is unbearable and fundamental change is needed. And I know that you already know this context, but this was our standing point also. And the objective, why? What do we want? The goal is to change the constitution so that the animals are recognized as sentient individuals with needs and rights that are relevant to them. And currently, the animals in Finland are basically in the legislation seen as objects or as things. And this should also be a constitutional obligation for the public authorities to protect the fundamental rights of every animal. And we know that the law already protects the fundamental rights of human beings, and we need a clause in the constitution that states that this goes to other sentient individuals as well. And the premise of the Finnish legislation is that the well-being of animals is virtually always subordinate to the potential for humans to use them as commodities. And this is the exact reason why we need this addition to our constitution. So in short, the fundamental rights would, with a few exceptions, safeguard what existing legislation already claims to safeguard, but in fact it does not. And however, the clear change from the current situation would be that animals would have the right to life. And the Left Alliance, my party, also seeks to pursue the policies that promote animal rights and welfare, and these following quotes are from our animal policy program from 22, and it says, for example, that animals must be included in the Finnish constitution in the beginning of the program, and it says that the animals should not be treated as a separate or subordinate issue, but rather brought to alongside with other matters as equals, and that animal policy is also fundamentally linked to other global issues such as climate crisis and biodiversity loss and public health. And the reason why I wanted to include this slide in this presentation is that I want to highlight that this stance that I'm taking now here is not solely my personal point of view as a background as an animal rights activist, but the standpoint of the whole party. So that was the background. And now we go to the legislative developments and what has happened in the Finnish Parliament so far. First, there was this legislative motion for constitutional animal rights, and it was drafted by me and signed by 9 other MPs, basically from the lefts and the Greens and the Finns party, which is a far-right party. Which is maybe a little bit interesting, but many of them actually do love animals. I don't know if you have the same here in UK. So it was discussed in the beginning, in the Parliament in the beginning of the 23, and then referred to the Constitutional Law Committee, which I will talk later more. And I want to highlight that this motion was based on the initiative done by the Finnish Animal Rights Lawyers Association, so the credit goes to them, and Venla Matlein will talk more about their work next. But the motion consists of these 5 parts, which were the protection of animals, protection of fundamental rights of animals, fundamental rights of wild animals, fundamental rights of animal dependent on human care, and prohibition of animal breeding. And the motion was submitted at the end of 22, and however it was lapsed in April 23 since the end of the last parliamentary term. But was this for nothing, or why was this done? I see that there is even though it was lapsed, I think it was still important because, of course, the most important reason why this was done is that we want to make this reality one day. But the first aim, so in order that we get there, was that we need to give credibility, basically, to the proposal. So that was the first aim. And then I feel that it's also very important that now we are in the situation in Finland that the constitutional animal rights is an issue that has been already discussed in the parliament for the first time. And next time, third reason is that then next time it's a little bit easier to make it seem less radical demand and win more people and more politicians behind it. Because of course, in the first place, they need to be aware of the demand and be familiar with the issue. So that all those things we did with this motion. And then next, the Animal Welfare Act, which was introduced in 2002 and approved in 2003, and it got in force now in the beginning of this year. And it included like multiple proposals, and I won't go into the details, but I want to raise one example from this act, which is that it includes these positive lists, which Visa Kurki mentioned yesterday in his presentation. So it lists the animals that are allowed to use in farms and in circuses and in exhibitions. And this means that all the other animals that are not mentioned are basically banned from use. So this prevents, for example, the use of all other animals, such as dolphins, sea lions, and other wild animals, to be used in circuses and in traveling exhibitions. So, referring to the previous presentations, one could say that this is a tick rights law inside this law, and a clear ban without calling it a ban. And I'm now referring to the other presentations here. So, why do I want to raise this Welfare Act in this presentation? Mainly, the main reason is that because during that process, the constitutional animal rights was also topic that was assessed during the process. So I will talk about this in the next slide. But at the same time, the law also was weakened in the parliament because the animals don't have the constitutional rights. So when there was in the initial act, there was some certain improvements. They were reviewed in the parliament, and since they was reviewed against other rights, such as religious rights and the privacy rights, the outcome was negative from the animals' perspective, since animals don't have the constitutional rights. So those are the reasons that I include this act now in this presentation. But the Constitutional Law Committee that reviews these things is a committee that does this assessment in Finland, and it issues the statements on bills that needs the constitutional assessment, and also like constitutionality of other matters, for example, the international human rights instruments. And this is due to the fact that in Finland we don't have a constitutional court. So we do this assessment beforehand. And the Constitutional Law Committee basically drafts the constitution as well as the legislation that is closely connected to it. And when we want to change the constitution, that would happen, the main work would be done in this committee. So the stance of the committee currently has been, first, that the Parliament indeed can legislate animal rights. We have had cases when we have asked their opinion on this, and they have stated very clearly that, yes, if the Parliament wants to grant animal rights, we are perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay for the Parliament to do so. Nothing would be an obstacle to that. And secondly, its stance is on that the EU law actually requires the consideration of animal welfare already currently. So, when the review of the Animal Welfare Act was done in the committee, this was really interesting from our perspective, since they reviewed different parts of the act, but in that process they reviewed this constitutional animal rights as part of it. So what was the outcome? The committee stated that it is clear, they stated this again, that it's clear that the Parliament can decide to provide for rights for animals, or the Parliament can provide for the intrinsic value of animals. And again, it pointed out that the EU member states are committed to taking full account of animal welfare requirements in the implementation of EU legislation. These are direct quotes from the decision. And thirdly, they called for this above to be taken into account when assessing the possible need for constitutional reform. So for us, this statement, especially this last one, was a victory for us. That we have the Constitutional Committee saying that, hey, actually the animal rights is an issue that we should look into when we reform our constitution. That there is it's a lacking piece, basically. So how do we proceed from here? The topic will stay relevant in Finland, since we currently have in the Parliament the Citizens' Initiative, Animal Rights into the Constitution, which is prepared by the Finnish Animal Rights Lawyers Association, which Venla Matlein will talk next. And we also have other, so-called TIC rights proposals, such as the proposal of banning all factory farming, which we made this spring, which is also a legislative motion. And it basically says that, okay, if we have farm animals, all animals must be treated as well as other animals kept by humans. So we shouldn't have this distinction like farm animals or production animals, and that would basically end all factory farming in Finland. And that's currently in Parliament also. And then there is this constitutional reform, which will be a momentum when it takes place. And yeah, I just want to highlight that the committee said that animal rights is an issue that should be taken into consideration when we next time revise the constitution. And of course we will use this as a tool when we do the campaigning and the work in next phases. So my conclusion from the Finnish perspective is that the animal rights is gaining more and more attention in the Finnish legislation and in society in general. There has been a review from the politicians who talk about animal rights, and it said that election after election there are more and more politicians to whom this is a campaigning topic. That in 2019 there were only like few people who were talking about animal rights, but in the last elections there were more and more candidates who are like comfortable with the topic and speak out loud like, hey, this is an issue I want to promote if I'm elected. So this is something that is happening, and of course we have these ongoing efforts to improve the legal protection for animals. But at the same time, we know that the times are not easy. There are multiple other issues that are competing with our time and attention, and so on. But from the constitutional animal rights perspective, I also feel that there is those who are against the idea are nowadays used to the idea also. And there are even some politicians, like a little bit what Visa Kurki said yesterday, that if you have been like for decades doing this work, you see some like progress, which like what is different, for example, is that when I started, people were really hesitant to use the wording animal rights. They were talking about protection and so on. But nowadays, we have politicians who are, for example, there was this MP from Farmers' Party, and she wrote in a blog that she is against the constitutional animal rights. But her reasoning or the argument was that you can promote animal rights without giving the constitutional animal rights. So even she was using the term animal rights and promoting them. So that is an example that it's very like widespread among the politicians and parties, that it's like it's not radical to talk about animal rights. It's quite basic actually. Yeah. So, however, at the same time, we have a clear backlash under the current right-wing government, and I feel that the way to appeal to the right-wing politicians is to use the arguments that are relevant to them. For example, in Finland, the right-wing politicians are very interested in topics such as competitiveness, security, preparedness, and all of those you can use as an argument in our cause also. So we do a lot of that kind of reasoning to get more people involved. And lastly, my ask to you is to reach out to the politicians and parties. So do not forget that it is important to get your message and thinking to the political circles also and into the politics. So the last, this is the last slide, and this is a quote from my colleague who said this in the plenary session when the Parliament discussed the constitutional animal rights this spring. And she said that personally I see the status of animals as one of the great questions of our time, one by which we will ultimately be judged once history has washed away the surface noise that clouds our contemporaries' ability to distinguish the trivial from the profound. So by this quote, I want to say firstly that sometimes we actually do discuss the important topics in the Parliament also, and secondly that your work is truly important. So thank you.